Welcome to Caregiving Club On Air. This podcast is dedicated to the millions of family caregivers who want wellness tips and self-care solutions, who seek expert advice, and who want news about healthy aging and how to create well home design in our forever homes. I'm Sherri Snelling, a corporate gerontologist, author, and educator, a TV interviewer, host, and news commentator. I'm joining you from Southern California, where our interviews and news take us all across the country to explore the many ways to help you on your caregiving journey and to lift you up here at Caregiving Club On Air. Welcome to Caregiving Club On Air. I'm your host, Sherri Snelling, and we have got a lot of really great information for this first of our March episodes, where we're going to be celebrating National Sleep Awareness Month with our expert interview with Dan Gartenberg, who is the founder and CEO of SleepSpace, which is a platform for all kinds of sleep science and sleep solutions. And you are going to want to stay tuned for this interview with Dan because there's so much good information in it for family caregivers, but also for all of us. And then also in this episode, we are going to continue the theme of Sleep Awareness Month, but also it's March is National Nutrition Month. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the foods that help us sleep better. And then on March 20th, we are celebrating Companies That Care Day. Lots of really great things that are happening in the workplace. I'm going to share with you some studies and new things that are coming out about supporting employees who are also caregiving and what that looks like. We're going to touch upon the tragic story of Gene Hackman, who both he and his wife were recently found dead in their home, as you know from all of the news headlines. But they're talking now about the fact that Gene Hackman at age 95 was in late stage Alzheimer's and what that means. We're going to talk a little bit about not only the circles of care that we need as caregivers, but also what is the connection between Alzheimer's and sleep. We're going to share some news about that. And then we're going to, tune in for some well home design news also around our sleep environments and what optimizes that. And with all of that, I think that we're ready to dive right into our caregiver wellness news. So for our caregiver wellness news, as I said, March is National Sleep Awareness Month, and we're going to learn so much from Dan Gartenberg. I don't want to take a lot of the great information away, but I do want to touch upon just a couple key points. I'm also going to have a blog on our caregivingclub.com website that talks more about tips and solutions for good sleep. But just a couple of things I wanted to note for our listeners, because I know that family caregivers often struggle with insomnia. In fact, there was a study that was done on caregiver health, and it was 87% of family caregivers either have they get less hours of sleep once they become caregivers, they have sleep insomnia, and also a lot more awakenings during the night. We know that all of those things are not good for our health. And in fact, sleep is really our number one thing that we can do to achieve better health, even more so than nutrition and physical activity and all of that. So we want to really pay attention to our sleep habits. But a couple things here I wanted to note. So regularity is important as the hours that you sleep. So what that means is consistently getting up at the same time and going to bed at the same time every night is really key. And this includes weekends and vacations. I know sometimes I always say, Saturday, it's sleep-in day. But you really don't want to do that, because you want to keep those consistent circadian rhythms, which are light and dark cycles, our 24/7 light and dark cycles, that help with the regulation of our physical and mental health. And as I mentioned, lack of sleep is a really big one. Lots of studies now that show that if you don't get the 7 to 8 hours, and some people are a little different, they can maybe get by with a little less, but anything less than 6 hours is really not good for anyone. And that lack of sleep decreases your natural killer cells to fight toxins and cancer. So up to 70% drop if you have less than 5 hours of sleep a night. You're going to have a 70% drop in your natural killer cells. And so this is also connected to dementia. And as I said, it's also connected to an increased risk for cancer, including prostate, breast, and bowel cancers. So again, just really pay attention to that sleep. It can do have devastating effects. The other thing is we cannot catch up on sleep. Now, this is when I will raise my hand and say I'm very guilty of, because particularly last week I did some travel and it just knocked me for a loop because I was getting up super, super early, flying all day, checking into the hotel, getting up early, and I was on a different time zone. Anyway, I was all messed up. And I thought, well, I'll catch up over the next few days, but it doesn't really work that way. So, it's funny. I came across this sentence I wanted to share with you. Humans are the only species that deprive themselves of sleep deliberately. All other organisms are in sync with their circadian rhythms and getting the sleep required to repair and refresh, because that's what's going on at night. We're repairing our cells and our muscles. We're washing away all of those toxic toxins out of the brain. And so why are we doing this? Why are humans the only one that jeopardize their longevity and their health because we don't get a good enough sleep? I thought that was a great question. Anyway, you're going to learn a lot more from Dan Gartenberg, as I mentioned, from SleepSpace, and I'm going to have that blog. I'll have the link on the episode guide page. So now let's dive into March National Nutrition Month. And as we know, our diet and nutrition is also linked to good sleep and healthy, just health overall. And one thing that I do want to note, though, is that good nutrition will not overcome bad sleep habits. So while they are linked, and there are certain foods I'm going to walk you through right now that'll help you get to sleep or stay asleep, just because you have a better diet does not mean that you have to ignore all those other sleep tips that we just gave you. You still have to do all the good sleep stuff because the nutrition's not going to override that. One thing I also wanted to note is that, this trend in intermittent fasting, which has been really popular in the Alzheimer's and dementia worlds, and that's where you're eating all of your meals within an 8-hour or so time frame. So you're condensing the time that you have between meals. Was actually also really good for sleep. And something I wrote about in my Me Time Monday book was farmers' hours. So again, going back to kind of how we were when we were out on the farms, we were an agricultural society, we lived off of our light and dark cycles. We tended to come in and eat dinner around dusk when there was still light, so you could cook and see, and eat our meals that way. And so these farmer hours is really interesting because the science says that our metabolism is anywhere from 10 to 20% more efficient in the late afternoon before the light finally goes down than it is if you eat after dark. So this intermittent fasting, farmers' hours, whatever you want to call it, is kind of an interesting concept. And for a lot of people, it's like, oh, wow, the blue light special, But I've been doing this now for years, where I definitely try to eat my last meal before the sun goes down. One of the things that's really great for is you can always get a seat at a restaurant, because very few people want to eat at 5 o'clock or 5:30. Now that we have daylight savings, you can stretch that a little bit, the 6 to 6:30 crowd. But you may want to try it, because I think it's very efficient, we know, for brain health, but it also is tied to helping peak performance and our good sleep habits as well. So now let me dive into some of these good foods for National Nutrition Month that help with sleep. First of all, kiwi. So there was a study done that said people who ate 2 kiwis 1 hour before bedtime. Now that's too close to bedtime. I'm sorry. I know the study did that, but I'm going to tell you right now, you want to have at least a 3-hour gap between your last bite of food and when your head hits the pillow. Don't do anything close to going to sleep. You'll still have the effect of the kiwis, by the way, because they are higher in melatonin. But you want to just really be mindful of not eating, have that gap before you go to sleep. But if you ate, let's just say 2 kiwis 3 hours before bedtime, which is not what the study said, it said 1 hour, but I'm going to say 3 hours. You fall asleep faster, slept more, and had better sleep quality. Okay, that's all good. Cherries. Now, here's the interesting thing. I have always been somebody who loves sour candy, sour soda, all the bad stuff. But a tart taste is really like my thing. And I know my mom, she's the sugar lady. She loves everything to be sweet, sweet, sweet. But when it comes to cherries, you're going to go for my type. You're going to go for that tart, sour, not sweet cherries. And they have above average levels of melatonin for any kind of fruit or veggie out there, and a lot of antioxidants that promote sleep. And so people who have a lot of insomnia who drank 1 to 2 cups of tart cherry juice. Now, that's the straight cherry juice. Sorry, not the one with the sugar in it. Anything that has sugar in it is going to keep you up at night. So you really want to be careful about like foods like pasta and rice. You want to be careful about anything with added sugar. You just don't want to go there for dinner or anything late in the afternoon. So make sure that the cherry juice is just straight juice, nothing added. Anyway, if you did that, you were found to have more total sleep time and higher sleep efficiency. Now, fatty fish we know is really good because it's very high in vitamin D. So things like salmon, which I love, I could probably eat that every night, I think. And I do tend to get at least 3 to 4 servings a week, if not more. But it also has, of course, the omega-3 fatty acids. This improves serotonin. So serotonin is different from melatonin. Serotonin is one of our happiness hormones, and it actually emanates from our microbiome, our gut. And it's tied to mood enhancement. And so a study that was done over a period of months found that people who ate salmon 3 times per week, so that'd be me, had better overall sleep as well as improved daytime functioning. Okay, well, that's always good. Because again, we know if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to be like a drunken sailor. In fact, it's the equivalent of having a 0.05 blood alcohol level if you get less than 5.5 hours sleep a night. Nuts. Okay, so walnuts, pistachios, cashews, all good. The nuts can vary, but most of these include good melatonin levels, omega-3s, and minerals like magnesium and zinc. And all of those combined are going to help you get better sleep. So there was a clinical trial that was using supplements, and it was found that a combination of melatonin, magnesium, and zinc helped older adults with insomnia sleep longer and more deeply. But I'm going to talk about supplements in a minute, and you want to be careful. Get as much of these nutrients as you can from actual food. Supplements can be a little tricky. And it always, don't take a supplement until you talk to your doctor or your nutritionist or whomever, because we always think, oh, it's over the counter, it's a supplement, it's safe, it's good, it's whatever. Not always, and it can interfere if you're also taking other medications. So you want to be really careful. And then, of course, avoid caffeine, alcohol, and a heavy meal. It's going to definitely put a crater into your good sleep. And as I said, 3 hours at least before you go to bed, you should have the last morsel of food in your mouth. Now, we know that older adults produce less melatonin. And I just mentioned supplements. So I wanted to actually bring this up. So it's based on scientific data across the last 15 years. But they're finding now, the researchers, that melatonin as a supplement isn't as effective as you think. A recent meta-analysis discovered that melatonin supplements only increases the speed with which you fall asleep by 3.9 minutes. How much? And only improves your sleep efficiency by 2.2%. Okay, that's not enough for me to take a pill, okay? Gotta have at least a 20%, 30% boost in whatever I'm trying to do if I'm going to pop something in my mouth, right? So this just kind of shows you that be careful about these supplements because they're over-promising a lot of stuff. And what's happening now is something called melatonin toxicity. Because people aren't maybe feeling the effect because it is so low, they're taking more melatonin, and more is not always good. And so people are overdosing. And here are some of the symptoms. If you have overdosed on melatonin, be really careful because you can increase your nightmares. That shows you what it's doing to your sleep, which is really bad. You can have headaches, irritability, stomach pain, nausea, daytime tiredness, dizziness. Never good for older adults because trying to keep you from falling, at home and everywhere else. And check it out. Short-term depression symptoms. Okay, caregivers out there, be careful about that melatonin supplement because, you can already have feelings of depression or grief or whatever going on with caregiving. You don't want to exacerbate that. So I just say be really super careful and, try to get it out from the natural foods as much as possible. That's always better. Okay, so let's move on to Alzheimer's. I was hopeful that the Alzheimer's Association, which every year in March puts out their facts and figures report for the year, often we see an increase in people who are living with Alzheimer's. We see a lot of other really super great data. Unfortunately, it wasn't available by the time I came to record this podcast, so we're going to get it into hopefully the next episode or so for you. But I did want to just obviously put a spotlight on a celebrity, Gene Hackman, wonderful, great actor, one of my favorites throughout the years. I mean, so many good stuff. He played the best bad guys ever, right? Like I'm thinking about Unforgiven or Runaway Jury, or gosh, I could just name so many. But anyway, he was 95 years old, living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with his wife, who was I think about maybe 20 years younger. Anyway, they were both found dead in their home. Very tragic. And what has subsequently come out is that she passed away first. And because he had Alzheimer's, he didn't realize what was going on. And because there was some food in the refrigerator and he could go to the sink and get water, he could sustain himself for a little bit. But ultimately, after about a week, that wasn't happening either. And I think this is just one of those things where it points out that so two things I want to make note of. Even though you are taking care of somebody and you two are close, whether your spouse, partners, whatever it is, you also still have to have a circle of support. You have to have others who are checking in on you, calling, whatever it is, because these kinds of tragedies can happen. And, Jay Leno is also caring for his wife right now with Alzheimer's, and he recently had a horrific fall. I mean, if you saw the pictures of him, he was just all bruised and everything. And because, again, he's got Mavis, his wife, at home that he's caregiving for, and she's in the later stages of the disease. If you become ill or you trip and break your leg and you're in the hospital or emergency, or now you can't get around, I mean, those are the things we have to really think about. And so often we see caregivers become, again, more ill, more tired, not getting sleep, more colds, more flus, whatever it is, because we're sacrificing so much. So it's just a noted, moment with all of these news headlines with these celebrities, that you definitely want to have a circle of care around you, so that if anything should happen, you've got people you can call upon, or people who are caring about you and checking in on you. I know I have my BFF Molly, and if she doesn't hear from me, like, not every day, not quite that bad yet, but she definitely checks in on me, particularly because I have a tendency to go radio silent. I just got too much going on. And the days go by so fast, and she's like, "Hey, where are you? How are you?" So it's just nice. It's nice to have somebody that cares what's going on. The other thing I wanted to mention about Alzheimer's and sleep is that there are new studies now indicating that individuals who experience difficulties reaching or maintaining that REM sleep, and you're going to hear about that from Dan, or who spend a smaller percentage of their sleep time in the REM cycles, are going to be at a higher risk for developing dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And in fact, that first REM followed by deep sleep cycle that Dan's going to talk about, if you go to sleep and you don't get into that first REM cycle within 90 minutes, I saw a study that said that is a definitely maybe biomarker and indicator for higher Alzheimer's risk. So again, it is so critical for us to understand our sleep habits. A lot of people now wear a wearable. Dan's going to talk a lot about that. So you're going to learn where those wearables do good and maybe not so good. But just keep that in mind, that all these REM cycles in sleep are also tied to our cognitive function, our mental health function, and all of that. Now let's just switch gears really quickly, because I want to get to Dan. We had a nice long interview with him. But I want to also touch upon March 20th, which is Companies That Care Day. And there is a lot going on in the workplace and with employers, really thinking more about their employees who are family caregivers as well, and understanding, the challenges and dilemmas of that. And in fact, I was really honored. I was recently asked to present to about 15 top C-suite. Some of them were CEOs, some of them were chief human resources officers, some of them were chief financial officers, but top big name companies. I won't name them because I think it was kind of a private session, but they were the top companies in travel, hospitality, financial services, athleisure wear, tech giants, insurance, and entertainment. So you let your mind flow on that. But they were big companies, and I was a little nervous, but they had me come in and talk about caregiving in the workplace and what are the trends and what are the things we should be thinking about as employers. What's the role of employers in supporting a workforce now that has many, many more people across all generations caregiving? So that was really a thrill for me and very exciting. I just want to do a shout out and a big, huge thank you to the Care for Business team who brought me in to do that talk. They also bought my book. I always love that. And gave it away to all the attendees, all these C-suite people. So wonderful. But thank you again for the Care for Business team. But also, let me tell you some trends or things that are happening. So U.S. News and World Report, in collaboration with SHRM, which is the Society for HR Management, and the Milken Institute Center for Aging, they, for the first time, had an annual ranking that now is going to be every year on the best places to work for family caregivers. Wow. Okay. How exciting is that? I mean, I've been doing this now for 20 years, and I got to tell you, you see something like that and you're like, we're finally here, folks. People are paying attention. But great list. I'm going to have a link so you can check out which companies made that list. It is only the big publicly traded companies. So if you happen to work for a more regional or smaller employer, they didn't, of course, assess that. But I think it's a trend that hopefully we'll see. And the Milken Institute also put out a report on what's happening in the workplace with caregiving. And just a couple notes. The number one is the struggle with work-life balance. I mean, that's kind of, we all know that. But what's the solution? Well, I'm hearing more and more from every advisory group, every research report. I've been involved in some of this stuff, and it seems to be bubbling up to having a caregiving concierge access. Someone you can call at any point along your caregiving journey, and it would be subsidized or provided through your employer, and that person can help guide you, right? So, okay, think about this, or let's do this, or let's get you, locked up with this kind of service or product or whatever it is. That seems to be kind of the number one thing, because there's so many things that caregivers need, and you can't fulfill everybody's need in the workplace because everything's personalized. It's very unique to each one of us, our caregiving situations. So employers can't be expected to cover all those bases, but at the least they could have this that can then connect their employees to the good resources out there, right? The other thing is the employers are saying, hey, I need financial planning help. I understand long-term care costs now are going to hit me maybe hard if my parents haven't planned well enough, or my grandparents or whatever. So I'm going to need to figure this out for myself, my family, and my older loved ones, and I need help doing that. So financial services and financial planning is bubbling up as the next big need. And then also just the self-care. More and more caregivers are saying, hey, I get it. I know I'm going to spend maybe 20 hours a week caregiving. How do I have that balance in my life? How do I do the self-care? And so a lot of things around education, around caregiving, but also education around wellness, our own. And that's what I do. This is why I'm so thrilled to see this stuff, because I've been doing these workplace webinars now for over, I think it's been 12 years. Yeah, 12 years. And we have so many people joining now. And, the self-care one, I got to say, it's still the number one webinar that I do. We do all kinds of topics, but that's always a big one. So, but I'm excited to see that employers are definitely embracing that, supporting their, the knowledge base for their caregivers, getting them good information, and then being able to tie it back maybe to some of the corporate wellness benefits, or even the specific caregiving benefits that they may offer in that particular workplace. And then just a quick shout out, because, we're doing our self-care in 7 minutes videos every Monday. I can't believe I've made every Monday, because, usually I'm late on things, but this has become my new discipline. But anyway, I just wanted to do a shout out for this month. We have Digital Detox with Huga and Nixon, and that's from my book. It's The Art of Cozy and Doing Nothing. We have one on sleep science and the benefits of daydreams. And by the way, we also want to mention that National Dream Day is March 11th. I'm going to have a blog on why daydreaming helps us as caregivers build resiliency and build more creativity in problem solving. So we're going to have a blog on that. The 4 hormones of happiness, that's a fun one. And then how to eat the rainbow every day for National Nutrition Month. So you can check those out on our YouTube channel, and please subscribe. And we'll have links to those on the episode guide page. Now, with all of this good news, the best is yet to come, because now I'm going to go to my interview with Dan Gartenberg, who is the founder and CEO of SleepSpace. Now, this is a fantastic, really kind of a platform, if you will. It's a holistic solution for sleep. It's got all kinds of good articles and information on sleep science and products, everything from mattresses and pillows and wearables and all kinds of stuff. And Dan is the guru. He is one of the noted sleep science experts out there. Done lots of NIH, National Institute of Health research and studies. His TED Talk has been viewed over 5 million times. And he talks about how sleep is probably the number one public health issue that we have in our modern society. And we're not doing well. How do we do better? So, with that, you're going to learn so much. Here's my interview with Dan Gartenberg of SleepSpace. So, as you know, in March, we are paying a lot of attention to sleep and sleep awareness. And I have one of the best experts out there for this episode of our podcast. We want to welcome Dan Gartenberg, who is the CEO and founder of SleepSpace. So, Dan, welcome to Caregiving Club on Air.
Hello. So great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on. You and I have talked over the last couple of years, and I'm just so fascinated with what you're doing with SleepSpace. And I know you're going to tell us all about that. But let's start with our first question we ask everybody, which is, where are we talking to you from today?
I am in Dumbo, Brooklyn, New York.
I love that.
Yes.
Well, I was just there a couple of days ago. So I missed the rain, which was nice. It was beautiful on Tuesday. So I know you've had a little bit of rain, I think, the last couple of days, right?
You got lucky. It's been pretty cold. But
okay. Yeah. I got the beauty of it and came back to California to rain. So anyway, it's great to have you on. And as I said, sleep, I think, is now one of the top things we're all thinking about when it comes to our health and our wellness. I think this is relevant both for, the older adults that many of our listeners and family caregivers are caring for, but also for ourselves, for our own self-care and our own, kind of me time, getting that good sleep time in. So let's just start with the basics. Why is sleep so crucial to our health? Because we're all told, okay, you got to get 7 to 8 hours, or you have to have a good schedule where you wake up and sleep at the same time every day. But the question is, why? What does that mean to my overall health and wellness?
Yeah. So sleep is related to literally every chronic disease. So if you look at the relationship between sleep and a chronic disease, it's basically always there, Cardiovascular disease, super strong links. A lot of that research comes from looking at breathing disorders. So, for example, not treating a breathing disorder, it's estimated to take about 5 years off of your life expectancy, largely due to the cardiovascular impact. Alzheimer's disease, strong links there, both correlationally and causally. And that's my area of research. And the reason why it's so related to Alzheimer's and related dementias is because sleep cleans out toxins that form in the brain. There's something called glymphatic drainage. And one of the theories for Alzheimer's is amyloid accumulation, beta amyloid accumulation in the brain. And deep sleep in particular has been shown to clear out this plaque that accumulates. And now sleep also regulates inflammation responses, which is another theory for why you might get dementia. So, whatever the theory is, basically sleep has a solution for the Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Obviously, your immune system in general, this is probably why it's related to everything. There's some cool studies showing that if you sleep well before getting a vaccine, you actually produce more antibodies for the vaccine. So this is a little hack. Like before a vaccine, make sure that you sleep well. Relationship to cancers, basically really strong links with hypertension. You can have 1 day of sleep deprivation and you'll have more hypertension the next day. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. I can go on and on.
Yeah, I think it's so important for us to kind of have that explanation of why, because a lot of people, I know when I've been out there talking about my book, and sleep is one of the things I talk about, but they say, "Oh, I've been getting by on 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, and I'm good." And for some people that may be okay, but you're right, that deep sleep and understanding why it's important to allow the brain to kind of go to work at night and do all the great things that it needs to do is so important. You have talked and I know written about, there's a lot of wearables out there, right? We've got Apple Watch that has a sleep app on it. We've got Fitbit and Aura Ring, whatever. And all these things kind of track your sleep and your circadian rhythms a bit. But you say it's really not enough. It's not enough to just have the data. It's not, you've got to have things that are going to help you get that good sleep. So explain that a little bit. And what do you think is the right prescription of wearables or other things that we need to get that good sleep?
Yes, I know too much about this probably. And I've made algorithms on various devices against what's goals. First off, to understand this tracking question, it's necessary to appreciate what is gold standard truth on this. And for sleep scientists, standard truth is a montage of electrodes across your body, head, chest, and this is called polysomnography. And from this, we're able to measure the main sleep stages, which are, it's a little more complicated than this, but it's essentially light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. And so throughout the night, typically your sleep cycles are like 80 to 90 minutes, but it fluctuates quite a bit. It's not a set amount usually. And you usually go light sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, REM is sort of the pattern. Now, trackers have been out there monitoring this for 15 years,
Right?
A lot of times, a new tracker will come, people, maybe this one's cool and people get sick of it. And it's not necessarily solving the problem. And, usually the experience is like you track for a while, you sort of understand your sleep a little bit better. And then it's just telling you the same thing, relatively speaking. And you sort of know if you've slept well to some degree. Sleep is very unconscious, so it's difficult to know. But, it's basically not providing you actionable information. And sometimes it can even do more harm than good if you're particularly a anxious-minded person. And there's a word for this now called orthosomnia,
I
which
saw that
is
on your website. I was like, that I hadn't seen that before. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting.
yes. So it's basically, your Aura Ring, or I'm using Happy Ring now, which is a new one, similar to Aura, but it can diagnose sleep apnea. It'll be like you slept horribly, and then if you're a little bit anxious minded, that makes you more anxious, and then you sleep more horribly the next night,
Yeah,
essentially.
and I don't want to wake up and be scolded by my wearable.
Exactly. It's like you did bad. Like,
Yeah, you're bad. Oh, great. Okay, I'm gonna have a good day today.
so I'm focused on like actionable solutions, not data for the data's sake. So, my thing says I didn't sleep so well. Now what can I do?
Right.
And when I think about what to do there, I see tracking as a means to an ends. The ends
Right.
is improving your sleep quality. And it's usually necessary to track accurately in order to do that. So I built really accurate algorithms. Your audience might not believe me, but I have an Apple Watch algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
It lives on the Apple Watch, and it's more accurate than Apple's algorithm.
I do believe you
Yeah.
because I
The
do
reason for
find that
that,
with other things as well.
yeah. So I actually hack the Apple Watch to sample at a higher level of granularity than they do, because they're
Okay.
not willing to sacrifice there's a trade-off between data granularity, which really means data accuracy, and battery life. So I will push the Apple Watch to its limits
Mm-hmm.
um, in order to track sleep with the Apple Watch. But the other main difference is I'm doing this in real time. So every 30 seconds, I'll measure your sleep state and then do something based on that. And when I say do something, usually when I think about it, it's changing sound, light, and temperature in some way to optimize your sleep quality.
Now, do
Um,
I have to do that, or do you do that for me while I'm still in my
Yeah,
sleep mode?
so that's the hard part about sleep is you can't really do much, can you?
Right. We
You're
don't
sort
want to
of a
wake up.
captive audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's also an opportunity because it's the one time someone is a captive audience. They're not, flipping through their phone and being constantly distracted by life.
Right.
So I'll adjust sound based on your sleep state to more accurately block out noise pollution. We play a deep sleep stimulation sound. We do a smart light experience. So you get like a sunrise wake up in the morning. We'll do red lights at night. These are like, it's like, okay, I have this fancy way of enhancing sleep. What are all the reasonable things I can do? So like
Right.
red light at night is better than, abrasive blue light.
Right.
I'm trying to do some more temperature stuff, but that's sort of not totally fleshed out. And then I also have a way of sensing with just the phone sensors because a lot of like insomniacs really don't want to wear anything. A lot of people just want to, but everyone has a
Right.
phone. So there's an option to just use your phone. And then the third way to track is really, it's funny, like your perceptions are
Right.
also a really relevant measure. So there's
Right.
something called the consensus sleep diary. So you can sort of accurately report how you slept. These are all the ways that we can understand you, and then have an AI agent, we call it Dr. Snooze, give you that feedback that you need to improve your sleep quality.
Well, that's cool. So you kind of are interacting with an expert, Dr. Snooze, on maybe some questions. I'm curious about when you say if you don't like wearing, a kind of a bracelet watch type thing at night or whatever, we can track the phone or we can do things from the phone. How does that work then? How are you able to really understand what's going on with me if the phone's on my bedstand?
Yeah, so you can put it on your headstand. It's not really quite as accurate. I actually invented this special phone charger
Okay.
that sort of slides under your bed at like the base of your bed. So like the
Okay.
phone is sort of out of reach, and I'm picking up micro motions through the mattress. So basically, you can also, if you don't have to buy the phone charger either, it's a
Right.
little like some people might find this not great for sleep hygiene, but you can place your phone on your bed too, and it'll also work.
Okay.
So I'm measuring the micro motions through the mattress,
Okay.
and adjusting sound, and the whole thing can work with your phone in airplane mode, which is also really important because like
Right.
the phone is often the problem. Like we're addicted to
Right.
these things. Some people are concerned about the EMFs and stuff like this. So the whole thing will work as a closed loop as well.
Okay.
And the other, the phone, this is like a nerdy science thing or a nerdy engineer thing. The phone is a more accurate motion sensor than any wearable you will ever buy. Um,
Really? Oh, that's fascinating. Okay.
there's two actigraphs in every iPhone.
Right.
Because they use it for like gaming and stuff, so it has to be like really precise motion data.
Okay.
So we're leveraging that. And
Okay.
then also the microphone. Um,
Right.
so you can record your snoring, you can listen back to it. A lot of times, the whole breath health conversation comes from like a partner being like, "You snore," and then they're like, "No, I don't." It's like, "Listen to this." So, and that
Now, if I'm
oftentimes,
sleeping next to somebody and either one of us is snoring or both of us are snoring, is it going to pick up my partner's, snoring as well, or
yeah,
is it just me?
so part of the logic of the phone charger is that the sound recorder is on your side of the bed, so it's a
Okay.
little bit more localized to you. It will still pick up your husband,
Yeah.
but I want to precisely play sounds so
Right.
that because, like for example, my wife likes a louder sound machine than I do for whatever reason. So
Okay.
since it's on both sides of your bed, there's actually a nice differential.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
so it's more
interesting.
targeted to
Yeah.
your side.
Well, I'll have to get with you. You'd have fun with my situation because we call it the three bears. We've got Big Bear, which is my boyfriend. He really snores pretty loudly. I'm the cub because I kind of just have, the little snores. And then we got the dog snores. So we got 3 snorers in the bed.
That's rough. That can
Yeah,
hurt your
that's
sleep.
rough.
But I think you
Exactly.
should, if you haven't gotten, or your husband, unfortunately, you can't test your dog for sleep apnea yet. Um, but if you haven't gotten tested, you certainly should. And this is another part of how I've like changed my thinking on this a lot recently. I was working for a company and I discovered that I have a mild case of sleep apnea, which happened shortly after my wife was complaining about my snoring. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
had gained a little bit of weight. And so, getting that treated
Yep.
is super important. And 80% of people are undiagnosed and
Yeah. And to your
suboptimal breathing.
point, I should say he does have sleep apnea, and he's got the
Okay.
CPAP. He's now got the CPAP machine, and we're also looking into kind of the wearables now that you can do for that. But,
Huh.
I had a question, and this is what I didn't put on our list that we were gonna talk about, but I'm fascinated by this. I just came across it, some research a couple weeks ago, and it said that if you don't get into your first REM cycle within 90 minutes of going to bed, because you mentioned the 80, 90-minute cycles that we're in, if you don't get into it in that first 90 minutes, and it might take you maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours to really get into your good deep sleep and all that, that you're going to increase your risk for Alzheimer's. Can you
Hmm.
respond to that, or have you seen anything on that?
Well, early onset REM is actually what I know about. First off, to take a step back, we want more deep sleep and we want more REM sleep.
Okay.
These are like the regenerative types of sleep. That
Right.
being said, even light sleep is regenerative. So, it's sort of a misnomer a little bit. People think, oh, it's just light sleep, it's not important. But, light sleep is good. You're spending most of your time in bed in light sleep, usually around 50% of the time. Light sleep and deep sleep are both types of non REM sleep. Um,
Okay.
the main difference is, and it's sort of a gradient, really. Humans like to just cut things up into categories, but you know, the difference between light and deep is the prevalence of these delta brain waves, which are happen in deep sleep, these long wavelength brain waves. So, but for your question with Alzheimer's disease, there's a lot of evidence, and I think it's related to this, what you just said, that if you don't get enough deep sleep, it's going to increase the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease and related dementia.
Okay.
Basically, these um, the lymphatic drainage system during deep sleep
Right.
basically pumps out more of these plaques at like a 2 times greater ability. And you actually have these like lymphocytes in your neck and stuff that like pumps out this metabolic waste that forms throughout the day and, through your spinal fluid and eventually goes to your kidneys actually. Um, and so that whole process, yeah, if it makes, I don't know the paper that you're referring to. I'd love to check it out, but what
Yeah,
you're
I'll send it
saying
to you.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. Interesting. You mentioned sounds, and I'm fascinated by the soundscapes or even the soundtracks, that might help us with sleep. Tell us a little bit about that because I know it can be really powerful. And most people have heard of white noise, but I had written about pink noise, which a lot of people don't know a lot about. And I think you also have written about pink noise. Tell us what are really kind of the best soundscapes to get us into sleep and stay asleep.
Yeah, white noise is a little grating on the ear, actually. Um, totally agree with you. Pink noise is like way more, I find it more relaxing. We have like it's similar to pink noise. We call it dynamic sound mask. It's sort
Mhm.
of like a combination of frequencies. So it's like almost like not it's not as like the same sound constantly. It's like there's like an envelope to it, so it's a little bit friendlier on the ear. But
Okay.
noise pollution is a big source of awakening. So when your dog is snoring, that'll wake you up, even if you're not aware of it. Too. That's the other thing. If
Okay.
you can have these micro awakenings, micro
Right.
arousals. If you're awake for 2 minutes or less, you're basically completely amnesic to it. And it's quite common to wake up periodically throughout the night. It's, part of the whole thing. So blocking out those noises will help.
Okay. Yeah.
And
The
yeah,
right. Yeah. So keep going. I'm fascinated
oh,
by the
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so what we'll do, we start out, the way I like to think about it is a journey of sounds.
Okay.
So we start out with something that's a little bit more grabs your attention. So I like to do ocean waves, and you can select like lots of different nature sounds, but like ocean waves for the wind down process, lights are red.
Okay.
Then lights turn off and you do the dynamic mask, which is basically pink noise, like you said. And then
Okay.
we do like a 528 hertz wake up sound as one example. That's how I typically wake up. Now,
Right.
the other piece of this, I study cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. That's what a lot of my grant research has been on.
Right.
And there's something in CBTI called stimulus control, which is essentially associating your bed for sleep with sleeping.
Right.
So I see sounds as an aspect of stimulus control. If you have this relaxing sound, it almost becomes a cue that now it's time for bed. So it's like giving your body that awareness, and like maybe you're like waking up from a dream or something, and then I hear my ocean waves. I'm okay. I'm in my bed or something. So it's like a cue. Now is relaxation, calming, sleeping time.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between a pink noise that's a frequency, as you said, it's kind of simulating maybe some nature sounds versus actually hearing, the waves, soft waves on the beach or maybe raindrops on the leaves or whatever. I mean, is it better to have just that frequency or is it okay to have the actual, like you're in the forest, like you're on the beach or wherever?
Yeah. So the thing about, and I have a paper about this, and one of my mentors, Raphael Buxton, has a paper from 2012 about the impact of sounds on sleep. He was actually studying sounds in hospital environments because, like, it's
Right.
pretty ridiculous. Like, you're in the hospital trying to recover, and like
Oh,
the IV
I know.
alarm is going off.
Yeah, I was reading that back what like maybe I don't know the 60 before all the technology hospitals were like libraries, right? Everybody's
Huh.
really quiet. The
Oh,
decibels
interesting.
were around 30. Now the decibels are over 100,
Yeah, it's
particularly if
like
you're in the ER.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. But so what do you
So
think about that? Yeah.
no, yes. So basically, the big takeaway from that research is abruptness is what's disruptive,
Okay.
right? So if you have like something that gradually ramps up to 60 decibels over like a 1 minute period of time, the
Right.
brain's okay with that. But if you go from 0 to 60 decibels in like 2 seconds, it will wake you up. It has to do
Okay.
with like the startle response, and like evolutionarily, like we need to be attentive to like, abrupt sounds so the lion doesn't eat us or whatever.
Right. Survival.
Yeah, right. We did live in, the forest and plains for 100, 200,000 years.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, so that's sort of the story there. If ocean waves is sort of gradual enough that it's okay, but
Okay.
like crickets chirping, it might be too much of an abrupt on off, that I would recommend it to play all throughout the night.
Gotcha. What about actual music? I'd seen another study that used classical music at about 60 beats per minute, so, slower, soft, that helped
Yeah.
women get into sleep and stay asleep. What do you think about actual music?
So I guess there's also a difference between getting into sleep. And yeah, so like getting into sleep, it's okay for a little bit of abruptness. You're sort of like drawing your mind out a little bit, and it doesn't need, you're still awake. So you're like bringing your mind down. I wouldn't necessarily play music all throughout the night. Some people also like like have the TV on in the background all throughout the night. Not so,
Right.
I would say
Not
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 so
so good.
good generally.
Yeah.
There is like some if you do it the right way. So also, it's all about if you were to like be able to precisely measure the person too, it might be okay. So there's a cool thing in sleep. It's called targeted memory reactivation, where you can basically associate something that you did during the day with a sound. Maybe it's music.
Right.
Um, and then you replay that sound and it primes that thing you were wanting to associate. And then you
Right.
actually do that task better the next day.
Okay.
You're basically, it's basically like a form of inception that you can do to yourself if you've ever seen
Right.
that movie.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so if you know when to stop playing the sound before you wake the person up, that's the key. Like
Okay.
if I can measure you in real time, like I have a way of measuring someone in real time. So
Right.
like for example, I play something called deep sleep stimulation, which is pulsing of sounds to try to get more deep sleep.
Right.
But the second I see that it's making someone like a little bit restless, I'll ramp it down, I'll turn it off.
Right.
So if there's biofeedback, you can do stuff with sound that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah. Which is why you want to turn to SleepSpace because they're going to help you with all of this stuff, right? You're going to help with the coaching and setting things up. We've only got about 10 minutes left, but I wanted to also get into the blue light. You mentioned the blue light emissions, and many people are getting into bed and they're doom scrolling their social media, or they're checking their last emails of the day, or whatever it is, or they're reading with a nightstand bed lamp, or they're watching TV, like you said, and all of that stuff is it makes it harder, right, to get into sleep, and you wanna make sure you don't have those blue lights. Like, I turn to the red, amber, orangey lights, and I put them throughout where, 'cause me and my boyfriend are a little older, so you get up at night and have to use the restroom or whatever, and when I first put him in, he's like, "I feel like I'm in Amsterdam in the red
I
light
know.
district."
My wife said the exact same thing when she first met me. But now she loves it.
I was gonna say, but I think it
Yeah,
really works because
yeah,
otherwise, you're gonna trip over something or you're gonna wake yourself up. So talk a little bit about
yeah.
the light and sleep.
Also really good. I just had a baby like a year ago. Also really good for that uh, as well with the baby and having the red light during like nighttime. So basically, your eyes have these things called photoreceptors in the retina that can detect sunlight even when your eyes are closed. And there's good evidence that the type of light that these receptors are exposed to impacts the release of melatonin differentially. And that's the main system. This sends a signal to something place in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this is how we wake up in the morning. We detect this light even when our eyes are closed. And this controls the circadian rhythm, and having a healthy, consistent circadian rhythm is one of the main things that's tied to that chronic disease thing that we talked about earlier, just like how sleep deprivation is. Being
Right.
consistent is also really related to this stuff. So blue light um, basically inhibits the release of melatonin more than red light.
Mm.
And I think there's two things going on here. There's that basic biology, and also it's not just the hue; it's also the brightness plays a huge role here. So, if it's 1,000 lux, which is a pretty bright light, it's going to be
Right.
totally different when you have it dim. Um,
Right. Okay.
so, you want it in your bedroom. Really, you want it pitch black. And if someone doesn't have a pitch black bedroom, I would say that's one of the best things you can do to optimize.
Okay.
And so it's not just the light with the phone. Michael Gradisar, who's a colleague, has done some really good work on how it's not necessarily the light as much as it's like the type of, and not even the type of media that you're consuming. So like if you're doom scrolling through Instagram and it's like super activating to your dopamine system and stuff like that, it's very different than like reading a relaxing book on your phone, for example.
Okay.
um so like it's also the content that you're consuming on the device. And whether that is enabling you to get into this relaxation mode or not. And that could be different for different people as well.
Yeah, interesting. So, I know we've talked about so much, but tell us a little bit about SleepSpace. I love this Dr. Snooze kind of virtual coach, but tell us a little bit about all the different things that our listeners can get from you, because obviously you are an expert at this and you've kind of curated this really great kind of sleep package, if you will, for people.
Yeah, so I'm trying to solve like any problem that the person might have. So we actually have if you're dealing with falling asleep and staying asleep issues, we have something based on cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia that was validated in a randomized controlled trial to be effective. And it's basically a 6-week program that was built with one of the leading clinicians in the space, Daniel Taylor, who's another one of my mentors at University of Arizona, and it'll go over all the major components of CBTI, which basically include relaxation, and we have a bunch, like more than 50 relaxation and meditation tracks within the software, stimulus control, which I mentioned before, cognitive training, which is basically a lot of times if you're an insomniac, you have these maladaptive thoughts that form around sleep, and so you try to address those. Sleep hygiene, which sort of everyone kind of knows from the world. And the other big one is something called sleep compression. It won't fully do it because you should really do that alongside a clinician, and the software can connect you with a clinician as well. But basically, a lot of times, people that have that are insomniacs, and this is not a treatment for insomnia; it's just based on CBTI. They spend too much time in bed, and counterintuitively, you should do the exact opposite. If anything, you should build up your sleep pressure so you're tired when you go to bed. So that's the other major component. And the other major thing, the second most prevalent sleep problem is sleep apnea, disrupted breathing at night. Technically, the definition is if you have 5 or more of these not breathing episodes per hour. A severe case, you'll have like 100 per hour. Like you
Mm,
won't breathe 100 times per hour. That's a very
wow.
severe case.
Yeah.
And so we have something called sleepcorner.com that sort of combines a way of getting a diagnosis for sleep apnea with the Happy Ring and a safe and effective supplement called MD Sleep with the software. So it's like a holistic solution.
Okay.
If you think you might have sleep apnea, you can actually get the diagnosis. Half of it can be covered by insurance, and and when you get the diagnosis, then insurance will
Yeah.
cover a treatment option, which could
Okay.
the first line treatment you mentioned is CPAP, but people also don't know if you have a mild to moderate case, you can also get a mandibular advancement device made by your dentist. That's actually what I use to treat my situation because
Okay.
I'm in like the 5 to 10 range for the
Right.
hypopneas. And yeah, that is probably the biggest thing that I've done in the past 5 years that's improved my sleep quality.
Right.
Um, and then we'll integrate with the smart lights. And I work with a company that has a temperature solution as well called Perfectly Snug, which is good for like hot flashes and stuff like this. So
Oh, that's cool.
there's a
And
lot.
And that's what I love. I mean, you're kind of you're a one-stop shop for a lot of different sleep issues and sleep solutions. And my audience knows that I love to bring on people who are really grounded in the science. There's a lot of evidence-based research, as you've been referencing. You've gotten your millions of dollars from the National Institutes on Health, and worked with academia and stuff. So this is not just somebody jumping onto the sleep bandwagon. You are really grounded in this, and I like people to know that what we bring to them is really credible. Tell us where our listeners can find out more about SleepSpace, and also what does the pricing look like if they're interested in getting different things.
Yeah, so I'll actually make a special link for you.
Oh, cool.
So everything is available at sleepspace.com. And
Okay.
for anyone listening to this, if you do sleepspace.com/caregiving club, you'll get 30 days free of the software because I really want you to be able to have access for it before
Okay.
I collect any money from you.
Oh,
Um,
that's great. Thank
yeah, and
you.
make sure it works for you, and if it does, help me survive. So,
Well, Dan,
um,
thank you for that. We hadn't worked
yeah,
that out ahead of time, so that's a
no,
great surprise. Thank
yeah,
you for
yeah,
our
happy to
listeners.
do
Yeah.
that for you, Sherry.
Great.
And then after that, if you do like it, then it's $99 a year.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Dan, it's just been so enlightening and insightful. Thank you so much for sharing really great information for our listeners and giving us this little bonus gift of, getting a discount and getting a free 30-day trial of everything that you're doing. So again, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, how great was that? I mean, so much good information from Dan and a little bonus for all of us. I'm going to certainly take him up on it for a free 30-day trial for SleepSpace, where you can find out all kinds of stuff and get some help from Dr. Snooze. I love that. Also, want to just do a quick reminder that we do have other podcasts that have we've talked to other sleep experts. So, quick shout out to Wendy Troxel and Rick Renner, and I am going to have links to their episodes on our episode guide page for this episode, just in case you want to check those out. And then again, thanks to Dan and all the good information, but also the free trial for SleepSpace. That's awesome. So let's dive right into our Well Home Design news, and we're going to continue, of course, with our National Sleep Awareness Month sleep theme. I'm going to have a link to my blog where I'm going to share those tips from my Me Time Monday book that are on sleep hygiene, sleep environments. What do we do to achieve better sleep? What are some of those tips and all of that? But I'm going to just quickly go through these. You can read more about it in my book, but also in the blog that I'll put up on caregivingclub.com. And we'll have a link on the episode guide page to that. But, we should only be in our bedrooms to sleep and maybe have sex. That's it. Two things: sleep and sex. That's all that's supposed to be going on in the bedroom. And I know many of us, we're doom scrolling at night, we're checking our last emails, we're streaming a TV show or listening to a podcast or whatever it is. And this is something interesting that I came across. It said, do you sit at the dinner table waiting to get hungry? Then why do you lay in bed waiting to get sleepy? In other words, but I don't think we're waiting to get sleepy. I think we're just trying to, squeeze out those last hours of the day and catch up on things and be ready for the next day. But it kind of leaves us sometimes with toxic feelings. You got a bad email or something you forgot to do, and all of a sudden you're ruminating about it. Definitely going to, impact your sleep. So you don't want to do that. The other thing is temperature. You want to drop the temperature in the room. And I know as we get older and older adults, tend to have less warmth in their bodies. So the solution there would be to make sure that you wear a warm pair of socks. Even I've had older folks tell me that they wear fingerless mittens to keep their hands warmer during night. But you don't want to turn the heat way up in your bedroom. You'll never get good sleep. Also increases bacteria growth, so that's always not good. So keep that bedroom temp, 2 to 3 degrees lower than you might. 68 degrees or so is supposed to be optimal. I had to fiddle with my hotel room thing the other day because it had it locked on 72, and I'm like, it's way too hot in here. Anyway, I finally figured it out and got it lower. But the other thing is you want to banish the blue light. I've talked about this before. That's all the technology that we use, even the lights at night and night lights. You want to get rid of that blue light because it keeps your brain thinking that you should stay awake. And you want to move into the red, orange, amber night lights so that your brain won't wake up at night. Take a warm shower or bath before bed. It drops your body temp and it helps you get into sleep mode. Use pink noise. I've talked about that. That's a big thing in my book. It's the best, what we call sonic cue for sounds to get you to sleep. It actually gets you to sleep quicker and keeps you in sleep longer than any other noise solution or noise sounds out there. So it mimics nature sounds like soft waves on a beach, raindrops on leaves, a soft bird song. White noise is just that consistent hum. Now, that's good if you live on a busy street or if you're in a dorm room, because that wipes out some of those ambient sounds to help you sleep, but it's not the best color sonic cue for sleep. Pink noise is the one you want to turn to. Anyway, I'm going to have a lot more on my blog, so you can check that out. I'll have the link on the episode guide page. And then just one final quick note, hospitality. I just mentioned a hotel I was in is jumping into the sleep science space for weary travelers. The Mandarin Oriental Hotel just recently announced that it has hired one of the first hotel sleep concierges. So this is an expert or experts to offer personalized sleep improvement sessions. So now when you travel, you can actually tap into these sleep concierges to kind of help you maximize, when you're away from home, and then also take some of those tips back home. So that's kind of interesting trend that's going on there. Anyway, we had so much news on our Caregiver Wellness News. I wanted to keep this a little short because we also had a longer interview with Dan, which was fantastic. And hopefully, again, we got so much good information on what's going on with our sleep, with our nutrition, daydreaming, and companies that care. So that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us on this episode. A reminder, you can find more information in my book, Me Time Monday, The Weekly Wellness Plan to Find Balance and Joy for a Busy Life, or visit MeTimeMonday.com or CaregivingClub.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Caregiving Club on Air. Please hit the subscribe button. To listen to us on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, SiriusXM, iHeartRadio, Pandora, as well as other listening channels. Check out all the resources and article links on our episode guide page at caregivingclub.com. Just hit the podcast tab at the top and email us with comments and questions at podcast@caregivingclub.com. Thank you again for listening, and take care and stay well.